In 1978, a child actor delivered one line on a sitcom, and it changed his life forever. Not just because it made him famous, but because it never let him be anything else. Gary Coleman was 8 years old when Diff'rent Strokes premiered on NBC. He played Arnold Jackson, a quick-witted kid from Harlem who moved in with a wealthy Manhattan family. The show was a hit from the start, but one specific line turned Coleman from a child actor into a national phenomenon. Every time an adult said something he disagreed with, Arnold would scrunch up his face and fire back. "What you talking about, Willis?" Audiences loved it immediately. They repeated it at work, at school, at the dinner table. Within months, it was showing up in parodies, in political speeches, and in advertisements that had nothing to do with the show. Within 2 years, Gary Coleman was one of the most recognizable faces on American television. He was on magazine covers. He was appearing on talk shows specifically to say the line. Merchandise with his face and that phrase was selling in stores across the country. The catchphrase had become a machine, and Coleman was at the center of it, generating money for the network, for sponsors, and for himself. But there was a problem building underneath all of it that nobody was talking about yet. The people who would feel it most had no way to see it coming. A catchphrase does not just sell a character, it locks an actor inside one. The more famous the line becomes, the harder the lock is to break. Coleman would spend the rest of his career trying to prove he could play something other than Arnold Jackson. He took whatever roles came his way. He did television movies, guest appearances, independent projects. It did not matter. Casting directors heard Whatchoo talking about Willis before he walked through the door. He never fully escaped it. He was not alone in this. Jimmie Walker had hit the same wall a few years earlier. On Good Times, the CBS family drama set in a Chicago housing project, Walker played J.J. Evans, the older brother with a rubber face and a talent for physical comedy. His signature line was "Dy-no-mite," delivered with enough force to stop a scene cold. Studio audiences went wild for it every time. Walker became the breakout star of a show built around an ensemble cast. His face moved merchandise. His catchphrase moved more. Booking agents called him specifically to show up at events and say those 3 syllables. Nothing else was required. The money was real. Walker earned significant fees for personal appearances and corporate bookings simply by showing up and delivering the line on cue. That is how powerful a single phrase can become when it connects with a mass audience. It stops being a joke and starts functioning as intellectual property, a short piece of audio with a dollar value attached to it. Walker later described the experience as a trap disguised as a reward. The phrase was generating income, but every time he pursued a different kind of role, he ran into the same invisible wall. The industry did not see him as a versatile performer. They saw a trademark. Casting him meant activating the catchphrase in the audience's mind, and that association made it nearly impossible to place him in anything that required a clean slate. If you find this kind of behind-the-scenes story useful, subscribe now. This channel breaks down how the comedy business actually operates. The most thoroughly documented case is Jaleel White. When Family Matters launched in 1989, White was not even a regular cast member. Steve Urkel was written as a one-episode character, a nerdy neighbor who disrupts the Winslow family and then disappears. White built the character from scratch, choosing a specific nasally voice, thick glasses, suspenders, and high-water pants. The line, "Did I do that?" came naturally out of Urkel's habit of accidentally causing chaos and then refusing to fully acknowledge it. The audience response was immediate and overwhelming. The producers brought Urkel back for another episode, then another, then they restructured the show around him entirely, expanding his role each season until the original family drama had transformed into a vehicle for one supporting character and his catchphrase. For the network, this was a straightforward business decision. The numbers supported it. For the original cast, it was something else entirely. They watched their show get taken over by a character who was never supposed to last past one episode. The internal tension on set became significant over time. White was delivering what audiences wanted, but the success came with a cost he would not fully understand until the show ended. By 1998, when Family Matters went off the air after 9 seasons, Jaleel White had spent nearly a decade playing one character in one register. When he began pursuing other work, the industry responded the way it always does in these situations. They heard the voice before he spoke. They saw the glasses before he arrived. The character had absorbed the actor to the point where separating them required convincing an entire industry to look at the same face differently. That is not a fast process. What these 3 careers reveal is a pattern the television industry understood and used deliberately. A catchphrase is not just a funny line. For studios and networks, it is a branding mechanism. It creates instant audience recognition, anchors merchandise campaigns, and drives syndication value. The business logic behind building a catchphrase around a performer is completely rational from the industry's perspective. You create a verbal logo, attach it to a face, and that face becomes a product with measurable commercial value. The cost of building that product is paid entirely by the actor. Modern television has adapted its approach, though not consistently. Sheldon's catchphrase, "Bazinga" on The Big Bang Theory, appeared rarely enough that Jim Parsons maintained a clear identity outside of it. Michael Scott's phrase, "That is what she said" on The Office, became genuinely famous without becoming the only thing Steve Carell was known for. Both actors had more leverage and more options than Coleman, Walker, or White ever had. The difference comes down to control and timing. Parsons and Carell were working in an era when established actors could negotiate how their characters were used. Coleman was a child. Walker and White were newer talents working in a period when studios held almost all of the leverage. Once the phrase took hold, the actors' preferences about how to deploy it were not the primary consideration in any room where decisions were being made. The catchphrase is still being manufactured today and faster than ever. Social media turns a single clip into a defining identity overnight. The mechanism has accelerated, but the underlying dynamic has not changed. A phrase that captures public attention generates real money and real visibility. It can also make everything else an actor does invisible by comparison, because audiences carry the phrase into every new project and wait for it to resurface. Gary Coleman died in 2010. Every obituary written about him contained the same 4 words. He had spent 30 years trying to expand that sentence. The sentence never got longer. That is the actual business of the comedy catchphrase. The line makes the career, and sometimes the line is the only part of the career that survives.